And we are recording. Holy crud, you guys. We made it. Really, thank you all, seriously, for bearing with me on this. I don't know. Okay, we're gonna try and pick a camera. Share my webcam. Yes.
Preferences.
In preferences. Yeah, here, you do that. And look up here. Sean's here with me, so there's two of us being this, I don't want to say incompetent exactly, because LinkedIn Live was not fully our fault. So
yeah, it's just spinning on the camera, man.
That's fine. They don't even see my face. Let's try and share that thingy. You know, the thingy that we want to share. It's called a presentation. So if you just arrived,
yeah, I'm going to kill the camera.
In live isn't cooperating. Please go to here, and we will have the presentation recorded and and placed up somewhere. Yep. Can you share screen? Hoping you had totally
done that. Done that.
There we go. Okay, so gonna do this. Yeah, people can see your screen. I know. Thank you. Thank you so much. Go to meeting.
Oh.
All right, let's just go. We're just going to go now. Can we get this off my screen somehow?
I don't know. Try that.
There we go. All right. Welcome. Good Thursday, y'all. Let's learn a little bit about SQL Server, the Command Shell edition. We are Jen and Sean McCown. We are two, believe it or not, SQL Server Microsoft Certified Masters. To be fair, LinkedIn, I do not believe is a Microsoft product, so that's clearly the problem. Probably runs on Linux. Someone in chat is probably going to correct me.
Actually, didn't they buy LinkedIn or something like that?
Hush you. He's saying, did they buy LinkedIn? We work on databases. We teach security, and we also make software for DBAs, which we're way better at than broadcasting and live streaming. It's a thing we do. So a couple of you might follow me online, might have seen this image already because I put it up in a blog. Yes, thank you. Andrea says, you're doing awesome. I appreciate that. We're being self-deprecating, but we also know where our strengths are.
Hard to believe we had a web show where we broadcast live for 10 years.
Yeah, we had a tech guy for that. Anyway, so if you have seen this before, it's because there is a companion blog on minionware.net that you can refer back to. We cover a lot of the same stuff, but there will also be some, discussion and flavors and so forth. Flavors, I don't know what I'm talking about. But it's a good representation of what we're going to cover today, starting with that little gray circle over on the left. And the deal with that is that the most common advice or orders or rules regarding Command Shell is to just disable it. If you disable it, you're secure, you're fine. So good. No, do not clip that and put it out there for people to hear in my voice, because disabling Command Shell is absolutely not enough to properly secure your environment. So this is the first time we're running through this version of the presentation. So I will occasionally hand off to Sean for demos. Sean, you interrupt me when you're like, oh, I have a demo for that. Or I'll ping you or whatever. It'll be great. So yeah, just disabling Command Shell is really, honestly, not the solution, and we'll explain why. First things first, we're going to get analytical about this. What damage could be done with Command Shell? This is going to take understanding Command Shell, which we're going to go over that in just a little bit. But what damage could be done? Could someone use it to bring down a server or drop a database? Could they use it to steal my wallet? What is the fear? What is the danger with Command Shell? We'll talk about that in the next section that I just mentioned, the understanding Command Shell. But first, I want to ask another question. What is it that we are securing against? Okay, we can just take it as a given that there's some sort of danger associated with Command Shell, but who are we securing it against? Aliens? Ghosts? The answer is never aliens, by the way.
Sometimes ghosts.
Are we securing against my arch nemesis, Sam? I don't know. In very broad terms, though, we need to secure Command Shell and SQL Server in general against people. It's very, very basic. This is that, day one of class kind of thing, but we want to define that. We are securing against people. Not people falls under some other category, bugs and, natural disasters and stuff. That's going to be under high availability and disaster recovery and stuff like that. Today we're talking about security. And when it comes to people, it's both the people that are intent on doing harm, so the hackers and the disgruntled employees and all that, and the people who do harm accidentally. And if you're a DBA and you've spent any time at all in production systems, you've run across that a time or two. I know a couple of people who are nodding emphatically, I'm sure. Okay, so we've got to understand this well enough to secure it against people, and just disabling command shell does not achieve that goal. So now, let us understand command shell a little bit. Let us really get into it, vibe with it. No. Let's move on to the next slide, actually. So, command shell is a system stored procedure, and it lets you run a Windows command, and it actually spawns a Windows command shell, it says on docs.microsoft.com, and passes in a string for execution. Oh, that's great. In other words, it lets you run Windows commands from SQL Server, which, okay, that's kind of cool, but it's also kind of scary. You could potentially run commands to create or modify or delete files or read them. You could use it to create users and add them to the local administrators group. That doesn't sound frightening at all. And a whole bunch of other really scary things. That scares the hell out of just a lot of people. And so a lot of DBAs, a lot of companies, and a lot of audits require command shell to be disabled, period, which I will say again and again does almost nothing for security. All right, what do we want to talk about next?
Do we want to talk about why it doesn't do anything for security?
We're going to get on. Sean has asked, do we want to talk about why it does nothing for security? Okay. We're going to totally get into that. Good question, person sitting in the room next to me. So by default, command shell is disabled. When you do a new installation of SQL Server, it's already off. Okay, cool, good to know. Who can enable it? Well, only people that are members of the sysadmin server role. That's it. Like that never ever changes. There's no time in the future in which, Joe Schmo who has read-only access to the Work2 database will be able to enable or disable command shell. Only sysadmins. Cool. By default, only sysadmins can run command shell. I had asked earlier in the streaming platform, which shall not be named anymore, who is able to run command shell, and someone said SA. Correct, but the broader answer is people who are members of sysadmins. So yes, SA, because they're members of sysadmin. And I say by default, there's a little bit more to that, but again, we'll get to that later. The main things that I wanted you to know are, I'm going to go back for a second, what command shell does. We already talked about the dangers a little, and the defaults. Who can turn it on and off, who can run it, who can enable it.
So does that mean that only sysadmins can enable it? Like you can't give somebody permissions to enable it?
To my knowledge, you cannot give somebody permissions to disable it. No,
okay.
You absolutely cannot. I say to my knowledge because eventually they're going to do some secret backdoor undocumented crap, and it's going to make what I say invalid. So now we're going to talk about auditing sysadmin, because we've already said sysadmin 100,000 times. Seems like we should focus on that. It is vital that every SQL shop audit sysadmin role membership regularly. I would just say nothing but that for the rest of the session if I didn't think y'all would get bored and log off. But sysadmin audits are absolutely critical. Even when we're not talking about command shell specifically, audits are critical. You don't want random end users or, CIOs and CTOs and VPs accidentally, just making a little change in production, dropping half of the objects in the sales database. Yeah, that's never happened to any of us. Yes, it has, friends and neighbors. What's more, it's very wise to keep track of the number of sysadmin accounts and keep those accounts to a minimum. If you have dozens of sysadmins, you have dozens of opportunities to get hacked or spoofed or, you know, whatever the cool kids are doing these days when they're hacking into SQL systems. Command shell just gives us another reason to keep a tight hold on who has these god tier permissions, because now, in addition to wreaking all sorts of havoc on the company's data, an unauthorized sysadmin could wreak havoc on the server itself, or worse. Keep hold of that "or worse" because we're going to come back to it later. All right. Non-sysadmins cannot enable command shell. I am beating this into the ground because I really, really, really want it to settle in and come home. This is one of those things that didn't settle in for me for a really long time. You know, it just didn't sink in for some reason. Anyone who is not a member of sysadmin cannot enable command shell, and by default cannot run it either, even if it's enabled. We'll come back to that. Okay, what are we doing next? Ooh, we're talking about, what are we talking about? We're talking about service accounts. So SQL Service Accounts are a very, very big deal. Now, I'm going to pause for a second and say, I don't know that you specifically, Sean, have a demo for the service accounts for showing what command shell is running under, do you? Is that part? You do? Okay, well, we'll get to that after I finish this. So the command shell command runs in Windows under the SQL Server Service Accounts credentials. That's a mouthful, but you know that the SQL Server runs as a service. It runs as a service in Windows and therefore has to have an account associated with it, right? That's the account that we're concerned with right now. So I'm actually going to hand this over to Sean, and you know GoToMeeting just as well as I do, and you can show us your fancy demo.
Take off the slide deck.
You want to take off the slide deck? Stop sharing screen?
No, just take off the slide deck.
I don't know. Does this escape? There we go. There we go.
I don't know.
I'm gonna hand the mic over to him too.
Yeah, you are. Hello, people. And you guys, you know, feel free to turn on your mics to ask questions if you like. You know how we work. Most of you know how we work. Okay, so I've got some demos here, but one of the things, and I might get a little bit ahead of what she's going to talk about.
Go for it.
But one thing I wanted to show you was the kind of damage that can be done. So a lot of times people think that if you create a proxy account for command shell, that it will, yeah, I know it's way in the future, that it will help secure, right? That it does the job, right? Now I'm running it under a proxy account. But the answer is it depends, right? Let me show you something. So here I am running this as I'm logged in as XP test.
This does tie into the service accounts at some point, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So if you look, XP test is not a sysadmin. See, not a sysadmin, but I have given it permissions to run command shell, and you can see here that I can't enable it. Right? Does not have permissions, but so that means I did create a proxy account. So here, I'm going to try to add this domain user called I'm a hacker. Uh-oh, I was able to add a domain user. And let's see if I can add it to the local admin group. It's already a member. Okay, so I already added it. Let's see if I can add it to domain admins. Oops, I added it to domain admins too.
No.
So I'm running this under a proxy. How am I able to run to add this to a domain admin group? Well, it depends on your proxy, doesn't it? You can see here that the command shell proxy in line 2, the command shell proxy I created was the domain admin. So I'm running the command shell proxy under the domain admin account. Now that hardly helps, doesn't it? Right? And I can see that right here. There is a really good way to see who you're running command shell as you can just call whoami.exe from command shell, and you can see here I'm running it under me because I'm in a different window. And then here, I'm running it under the domain admin. So yes, you can see who you're running it as. Now, what was the original question about services?
Yes, about services. So we're just illustrating when you run command shell that it runs under the SQL Service account credentials.
Right. Okay, so I want to ask the room, and again, feel free to turn on your mics. When I run command shell, if I log in as the SA account, like right here, right, the actual SA account, and I run command shell in a session, what user account does it use in Windows? Because there has to be a handoff, right? You can't have, there is no Windows SA account.
It's the SQL Server Service Account.
Yes, it's the service account. Perfect. And we're going to stop that there. I do have a point I want to make on that, but she's looking at me kind of side-eye. So
no, not really.
I'm going to stop that there and let her get back to, because I'll get too far ahead of her. Otherwise.
Yeah, you will. Oh, yeah, you're so far ahead of me.
But I can in just 2 sentences get really far ahead.
No, you can. Absolutely. I was teasing. So we are here, and we're going to go back to presenting, I think. If that SQL Server service account doesn't have admin access to the server, ooh, I missed the question because people are sending it elsewhere. Where's chat? There we go. It's the bright red button. Okay, if that SQL Server service account doesn't have admin access to the server, can you still create admin level accounts? I don't understand the question.
Well, the answer is if you're logged into Windows with a non-admin account, can you add users to the local group, to the local admin group? The answer would be no. So if the service account doesn't have local admin access, then the answer is no.
Yeah, there's no secret workaround or anything like that. It's straight up, Windows permissions. I think what I'm trying to do is this, and hopefully this won't take us back to the very first slide. Hey, it didn't. Yeah, he jumped ahead, but it's not that big of a deal. This is the way we operate after all. So yeah, service accounts credentials. That's very important to remember. And I will totally give you the slide deck for this afterward, in addition to having the blog, the article. So let's take a look at this. You are a sysadmin on SQL Server instance number 1, right? Server 1. If your service account, if your SQL Server service account is a member of anything at all, with any rights at all on Windows, which it has to be, and it's used across multiple instances of SQL Server, then you, as a sysadmin, have some level of rights on many servers. That is a danger, especially if your sysadmins are not very closely locked down and audited and monitored. So one of the points is going to be, do not reuse service accounts across instances. If you're a sysadmin and the service account is a member of the local administrator group, then you have God tier access on that server. You, the SQL Server DBA, can muck around in Windows all you want. That's not something I personally, as a DBA, want to have culpability for. I don't want to be held responsible for any of that crap. And anyone who's not a DBA doesn't want us to have those rights either. It's like, no, don't touch the operating system, don't touch the files. If the service account is a local admin and it's used across many servers, then very likely that account is local admin on a lot of servers. And so you're going to have God tier access on many servers. Yeah, that's worse. And then same thing. If the service account is a domain administrator, oh my gosh.
We've already seen that damage.
We've already seen that damage. It's bad. It's bad. Oh my God, don't do it. So yeah, definitely auditing admin, and paying close attention to your service accounts. That's really,
Can't say that enough.
you cannot say that enough. And we're actually going to keep on belaboring the point as we go along. It's important. So, action items. We know that only a sysadmin can run XP command shell, but when they do, the request goes to Windows under the service account. So, this is your action item list. Unique service account per instance. Yes, it's a pain, but security isn't supposed to be easy, right? Make sure the accounts are not local admin. Grant only the accounts permissions as needed. And we're talking about the service account, right? And make sure that they're not domain admins. Oh my gosh. Pretty please with sugar on top. All right.
I have a point.
You have a point? Sean
Yeah.
has a point.
So the analogy I usually like to give is like this. If you have local admin, if you leave local admin, or even worse, local admin on multiple boxes for your SQL Service accounts, it's the same as printing up 100 keys to your front door and putting them out on a box by your mailbox, and then turning around and complaining that locks don't work.
Yes. Yes. I concur. He makes a good point. All right. What are we going to talk about now? That's probably all we need to talk about. Oh, no, wait, there's more. We've been talking about the SQL Server service account, but we get into an even bigger can of wax, ball of worms, whatever, when we start talking about SQL Agent and MSDB. Let me click ahead for my notes. Yeah, something like that. So yeah, the SQL Agent is trouble. The SQL Agent job runs under the context of the agent service account. Sure, not a problem. Cool. The agent service account has to be a member of sysadmin. There is no way around that. SQL requires it. Okay, fine. So the SQL agent's a sysadmin, not a problem. Nobody's particularly careful about MSDB rights, and so somebody might not be a sysadmin, but might be able to get rights to read and write in MSDB.
I've got many subgroups that allow that.
Yeah. And that's a problem because the job-related tables in MSDB are user tables, and you can update them directly. And I'm actually going to pass this off to Sean because I know he has a demo of this.
I just got to find it.
You just got to find it. Well, while he finds it, yeah, any comments or questions on that, go ahead and put them in the chat. Do me a favor, though, and direct it to everyone. And I'm going to hand over the mic.
Hey, I have the mic now. So, okay. Her headphones feel different than mine, so this feels weird to me. It feels like I'm talking underwater. Okay, so you've got these permissions here that can write directly to MSDB. So if I were to come here, let's use MSDB, and let's say I wanted to do something like in a backup job. And what am I doing here? I'm adding a step. Ensure backup permissions. Let's call it ensure backup permissions so that none of the DBAs think anything of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Seems nice and safe.
And so all I'm going to do is run this code to put myself in sysadmin. So I'm just I'm creating a user and adding it to sysadmin. And you know what? Just so that nobody becomes the wiser even more, I'm going to call it # MS security or MS policy service proxy, because we've got a couple proxy accounts in there that are a couple double hash accounts, right? That are created by default. How do I know they didn't add one, right? So nobody's going to look twice at this account.
It looks very official.
It does. So here I can easily add this guy to this step to this job. Here, let me reset the job. Like I said, MSDB backups. Well, good. It doesn't exist there anyway. So now let's take a look at this. Let's see if I even have that job anymore, because, I actually created this demo on my previous box. So let me start up the agent real quick, because it's the agent and it needs to be started. There we go. And let's see if we can find this guy. what is it? Backup DBs. Here it is. So let's go into here. Let's look at the steps. Okay, good. It's got one step. Perfect. So now let's run this guy. If I can highlight this code, there we go. I'm going to add that step. Woohoo! I'm going to refresh my job. And I'm going to go in there. And now every time the backups run, I'm going to run this code that if my user account doesn't exist, so if somebody deleted it, I'm going to recreate it and add it to sysadmin.
So let me get this straight. You, as a regular user, just added a step to SQL Agent job to give yourself a sysadmin login.
Yes.
Oh, okay, just checking.
And since the agent is a sysadmin and most jobs run under the agent service, voila, it has permissions automatically. So that's called unintended privilege escalation. And it's bad, okay? So I'm gonna reset this like I did before. But that's not all. Oh no, that is not all. So there we go. I deleted that step. Now, I can, let's see, add a job step manually. Oh yeah, so this was using this SP, right? This one, sorry. SP add job step. But I can also just alter the system table itself.
Yeah.
Right? So I can come in here and let's go ahead and insert it directly into the system table. There we go. And you can see that my job step is back. So bad stuff right there. Oops. There we go. So, and also, since I need to set the precedence, I can also come in here and I can update the precedence so that the step actually gets hit, right? So I'm going to delete this job step yet again. There we go. And this is just setting the precedence back. Oh, no, it's not. So, okay, let's say that everybody knows, everybody on the DBA team knows that your backup job only has one step. So you know what? Instead of that step, let's just add this to the end of the command. So let's take a look at what we've got now. Oops. I haven't looked at this command in a while. So I'm going to come up here. I got job steps. There we go.
You have doubled up on that.
I have doubled up on it. There we go. Let's delete that.
You need to put null back.
Oh. Doesn't really matter, but okay.
Well, it matters because it'll be a syntax error.
But we're not going to run the job.
But it matters.
Okay, so what I can do is just add that code to that job step instead. So if another job step doesn't show up, then nobody's ever going to be the wiser, right? So I'm going to come in here, add that to the job step. Come back in here, let's check it out. And there's my code. After the backup code runs, I've got a nice little semicolon there, and then I'm going to add my user to sysadmin. That's lovely. Isn't that nice and scary?
It is nice and scary.
With relatively low permissions, by the way.
Yeah?
No. Yeah, because all I need is read write on these tables.
Yeah.
Now, you say, now I've got my backup jobs, and I'm in those backup jobs all the time, or periodically, and I would notice if this happened.
No, you wouldn't.
Sure you would. I mean, it's possible, right? But that's not the point. How many of us have SRS servers?
Oh, I do.
Right? Or any reports whatsoever, or customer reports like an archiving report, or a job that goes in there and deletes stuff, something like that, right? You can put it in anything, right? If you've got a job that, say, cycles your error log every day, or you've got a job that does something else innocuous and you never have any problems with it, you never have to go in there, right? How many of you guys, and I would be surprised if any of you, have ever gone into those SRS scheduled report jobs?
The ones that are named with just a long GUI?
Yeah, with the long GUIDs, right? And gone in there and made sure that they've only got that one step.
No.
Right? And made sure that that one step is accurate.
Yeah.
Right? It just doesn't happen. Most people don't do that.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to add a step to one of those jobs or to add code to that current step. And you would never know it. And it would be really hard to suss that out, right? So monitoring, yes, your service accounts, absolutely. But now you have to monitor all of your job steps, all of the code in the job steps. Oh, audio is cutting out. Well, okay. Not much I can do about that. Sorry. So there's a lot to handle when it comes to this. And I've been on many gigs that just had hundreds of jobs on them, right? There's no way in the world that I could monitor all those jobs manually, right? Did a job step get added? Did the code change in a job step? Something like that. Yeah.
I'll go check and see who's using what.
Okay. We're going to check our internet. We've got really bad internet here. So we've got to like kick people off the internet now. So somebody probably just started up a video or something.
Can they hear you at all?
Yeah, but it's really choppy. You guys, I'm going to talk here for a second and let me know if it's getting any better. Is it getting any better? Am I still cutting out? Is it still cutting out? Anybody at all? Nobody's going to answer me. Oh, okay, good. It is.
You're sounding better.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, great. Yeah, so somebody just started up a YouTube. So how much of that did y'all miss? Do you need me to go back over anything?
Probably the last 3 minutes.
Oh, God, I have no idea what the last 3 minutes was. Okay, so what's the last thing you heard clearly? Let's put it that way. Do you know? Okay, that's fine.
You were saying that there were other ways that you could escalate jobs.
Right.
With job steps.
Right.
And you were mentioning SSRS, and that's when it started cutting.
Right, right. Okay. So yeah, so kicking in from there, what I'm saying is like you never go into those SRS jobs with those long GUIDs and check to make sure that the code hasn't changed or that an extra step hasn't been added. It's just something that nobody does. In fact, I've only ever opened up one of those jobs like once or twice ever, and then went, yeah, there's nothing here for me. So that would be a really good place to hide code like this, or to hide code like anything you want, right? So, and you could put it in, the archive jobs or any kind of job that you have, as long as it runs under the service account, you're golden. And if that service account has rights on multiple boxes, then you can propagate this wherever. I mean, you can write anything, right? I didn't flesh this out here, but I can create a step to just run PowerShell. I can use Command Shell to run PowerShell, and as long as the service account, which it is going to be a sysadmin, then it'll run Command Shell just fine, and I can pass any code I want to into here, which means I could plant users on every box that it has purview to. I can do anything I want, basically.
Well, and that's assuming that the agent service account is also like a domain admin or a local admin?
It doesn't have to be a domain admin. I can put local admin accounts on every box, right? And give them these nice innocuous names. I mean, the example I gave with I'm a hacker, I don't think you would do that.
No.
But, so are we talking about, so we did talk about proxies, right?
We're about to talk about proxies.
Okay. Then I'll give this back to you and you can talk about proxies, and then I'll have something to say about that.
Sure. Color me 7 shades of surprise that Sean will have something to say about security. No, I'm actually quite lucky that Sean has a lot to say about security, because it's taking me, again, it takes me a while for things like this to sink in. But
because she was keeping our house keys by the mailbox when we met.
Well, someone told me it was a good idea. So we talked about the SQL agent is trouble, therefore MSDB is trouble. He already covered that any user with write permissions to MSDB can mess with the job steps and just wreak all kinds of havoc. I really hope that we have drilled into everybody how scary that is. And we've got you a list of action items. Service account action items, part 2. Make sure the SQL agent service account is unique per instance. It's going to help. Make sure it's not local admin, make sure it's not domain admin. And that third one there, that's the big one. Severely limited audit rights to MSDB.
And there's one that's not on here.
Yeah.
Make sure you run job steps under proxy accounts.
Job steps under proxy accounts. We'll have to add that later on. We try to be comprehensive, but there's just so much. All right. Now we're going to talk about the command shell proxy. I have heard this before, that you need a command shell proxy to lock down command shell.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a lot. The thing is, there's only a specific way in which that's true. Generally speaking, like by and large, a command shell proxy account expands access. If you want non-sysadmins to be able to run XP command shell, you create a proxy for them. So the narrow way in which this quote locks down command shell is by preventing you from giving everybody and their dog sysadmin. But that's a very, very specific point of view. So I would just prefer to say, no, a proxy does not lock down command shell. So when a non-sysadmin account tries to run command shell, if there is a proxy, then it'll run command shell under the credentials stored in that proxy account. And if there is no proxy, it'll fail. So that's it. A proxy, non-sysadmins can run it. That's what it's for. Proxy action items. And then I think we'll hand off to Sean because this is the big one. Only create a proxy if you really need to expand command shell access to non-sysadmins, right? I wouldn't recommend, granting some random user, I almost said another not as nice word, another random user sysadmin. It's much better to do the proxy instead. But if you do, make sure the credential has the minimum rights possible in Windows.
Common sense.
Yeah, well, a lot of things, you keep saying common sense, but everybody has different experiences.
I don't have a better word for it.
Yeah, well, make sure minimum possible rights and make sure the credential is not a member of the local admin group. You're seeing a trend here, aren't you, with the making sure things are not local admin, making sure they're not domain admin. Yeah. All right, so that's what I've got, and I will show you just a couple more things, and then I'll hand it off to Sean for the demo. There is a slide in here that just kind of summarizes what you're supposed to do. And then the big thing, and I'll post this in, well, I was going to say I'll post it in chat, but I won't for reasons. If you go to tinyurl.com/securemysql, that signs you up. Just be sure to click the audit and security. That'll sign you up for future events and more information on the same topic. So now we're going to go back, hand it over to Sean, and now you can take as much time as they'll be patient for.
I don't know that it's necessarily a demo that I'm going to do.
Oh, yeah?
As much as I just want to set your mind right.
Okay.
Right? I was talking to somebody about this just like yesterday or day before, that there is no such thing as command shell without a proxy. When you talk about creating a proxy for command shell, it already has a proxy, right? Because the built-in proxy is the service account. So stop thinking about it as command shell and a command shell proxy. Think about it as a sysadmin proxy and a user proxy.
Right? That's an interesting way to put it, because the sysadmin proxy is the service account. Yeah. And
it's the same way that you shouldn't, it's the same way that you shouldn't think about partition tables and non-partition tables. They're all partition tables, right? It's just that regular tables only have a single partition.
Right.
So there are single partition and multiple partition tables, but you can take a table that you haven't specifically partitioned and you can switch that data into another table.
Yeah.
So they're always partitioned, right? So it's the same thing. So stop thinking that these are two different things. There's always a proxy account for command shell. And the logic doesn't change, right? If I need to secure one proxy so the lower level users can't do too much, then it kind of makes sense that I have to do that with the other proxy account too,
Right.
just because it happens to be the service account, right? This is the service security model, right? And Microsoft has doubled and tripled down on it. What do you think happens when you run an R script in SQL? It's got an R script execution service that acts as a proxy account.
Oh, I thought that was magic.
Oh, well, yeah, that too. And so, you know, it passes it off to that service proxy account, and that account is what your R scripts run under, right? It just so happens that that's a separate service account. But that doesn't mean it's any less of a proxy than, or any more of a proxy than command shell is, right? So this isn't a bad security model. There's nothing wrong with command shell. There's nothing wrong with the service security model. You just have to understand it and think of it in the right way. And I'm going to ask the group, because everybody, everybody's always afraid to say this, right? So if only sysadmins can run command shell and only sysadmins can turn it on and off, then if somebody breaks in and they get a sysadmin account and you have it turned off, right? Where is the increased security and having it turned off?
And we're actually going to take a few moments of silence for this.
Yeah. Somebody answer me this question. Where is the increased security? Because all they got to do is turn it on and then turn it back off again when they're done.
I guess it falls outside of SQL Server.
Yeah, there is no increased security, right? You've done nothing for security. Now, if somebody breaks in and they don't have a sysadmin account, they break in with a regular user account, even if it's elevated, right? They can't turn command shell on or off, and they can't use it. So where's the increased security in having it turned off if they can't access it anyway? And nobody's been able to come back at me with that, right? Oh, well, that's because of this. No, it's impossible. It can't. And if you think it is possible, then you're saying that SQL security doesn't work, because that's just a tenet of SQL security. So you're saying that security doesn't work. So I want you to get your head right about this when you think about it, and stop thinking about command shell and a command shell proxy, because there is a proxy, period. That's all there is. It's always a proxy, and you address the problems the exact same way. And one last thing before I finish. When it comes to monitoring your jobs and monitoring your job steps and monitoring your admin accounts, I'm going to say this because this is under our brand, I think, that's one of the big things that Minion Enterprise does. I wrote this to address these issues, and I know we've got a Minion user in here, an ex-Minion user in here, and I know for a fact that she would attest to how well this works. We can monitor all of the sysadmin groups, not only that, but also the Windows groups. And we do that by default. So even if you've got a user that's buried 40 levels deep in AD groups, and somehow that bubbles up into having sysadmin on one of your boxes, Minion will tell you about it. And it'll say, this guy's been given these permissions on these servers. Am I right, ex-Minion user? You've experienced this firsthand. With any luck, she's still listening. And well, we'll wait for her. Maybe she.
Oh, she has replied absolutely.
Oh, okay. I thought she would turn on her mic and say something, but yes. And you can also monitor your jobs and your job steps. Yes, I love it. It's one of my favorite features. And we put no objects out on any of your servers. Everything's done remotely. And like I said, you can also You can also, monitor your jobs and job steps and see if any of them have changed and check them for specific language or anything if you want to. So, and that's just a drop in the bucket for what, for what Minion will do for you. So I just wanted to end on that not only have we presented you with these problems, but we've also solved them as well. And we also monitor every single database permission for every single user. And you can tell when those permissions have changed. So let's see, does it run elevated access by using the mini service so that we can send quarterly report? Yeah, you can manage, you can audit users' access across every box that they have access to on every database object that there is. So yeah, you can set up alerts that say, let me know when somebody gets access to this database that's higher than read-only. Or let me know if somebody gets access to this column that, if they get decrypt access to this column, or if they get control access to the certificate or whatever. Yeah, you can set up alerts for all of that stuff across your entire shop. And again, Andrea knows that very well. And this stuff, it's just brilliant. I mean, we're the only ones on the planet that audit security to this depth from a central location and without dropping anything out on any of your boxes. And you can set up your own alerts to alert for anything you want to. That's
rather than alert, we're looking for all access, not just the changed access, so that the managers can sign off on it quarterly.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I did that for a client just a couple months ago. Absolutely.
Okay. Is that part of which product is it a part of?
Minion Enterprise. And so not just the changes, but like you said, right? You're not looking for just.
So you wrote a custom report based on the data?
I provided them with the data. All they wanted was the data in Excel, so I gave it to them in Excel. But it's easy enough to put that in an SRS report if you want, or in an Excel report, right? You can present the data any way you like, but the data is presented in a very easy fashion as far as getting the permissions. It's presented in a very easy fashion for you to put it in any format you want. And the cool thing about it is not only do you have that report for the latest ones, but you also have the history of all of those. So you can go through and see how the permissions have changed even throughout the year. So yeah, you can say, look, not only is the permission this, and that's a big thing in audits, right? Is not just what are the permissions on this database, but have they been consistent throughout the year? And so you could show an auditor even, or your boss even, that look, these people have never had these permissions on these servers. So yeah, the history is also a really big deal.
Ooh, that's a good one.
We caught someone giving themselves admin access with, yeah, exactly. Yep, I remember that.
Read it to the people.
It said, well, it's written down.
Oh, I see, it's written down.
But Andrea says, we caught someone giving themselves admin access with these alerts, and then they would take them away from themselves thinking we wouldn't catch it. Yes, I remember that very well.
Yes, that one was great.
I love that. So yes, you can, our security works. And I love this, just the fact that when somebody adds themselves to any Windows group, they get, you will get an alert and you'll see, right? I mean, and not just SQL. We also have an expanded collection where you could monitor anybody's group access. But by default, we only do people who have SQL, groups that have access to SQL. And by default, we only check the built-in server roles, but you could check any role. I mean, you could write a report to check any role. So, yeah, it's good stuff. Anybody else have anything else? If not, I'm going to save you and shut up a little bit. I'll hand you off to Jen, and she can answer any questions you guys have.
Oh, you just dropped something.
It's the mouse again.
It is now I. Yeah, I went ahead and added the sales at minionware.net. It's not just for sales, it's for information as well. We're going to set up an info at pretty soon. But yeah, that tiny URL is just for security related and whatever interest you have, newsletters and events, by the way. So I'm going to hang out a bit more, but any other comments, questions, go for it. And thank you all so much for coming. Thank you so much for bearing with us through the technical difficulties. And I would like to know if anybody has sat through this presentation and learned nothing. You knew every single bit of this, because I promised to give you a shout out if that's the case. It's okay, the can fell down. They're all still here, but they're just enraptured and silent.
Well, your dulcet tones.
Yeah, my dulcet tones. I've put everybody to sleep.
Love them comatose.
Yep. Well, thanks so much again, guys. We're just a little past time. We all learned something. Thank you so much. All right. We'll be on Twitter at HeyMinionWare and LinkedIn, of course. So this recording will be up later today. And let's say again, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. You learn new things. Excellent. Excellent, excellent. All right. Cheers, guys. We'll see you next time. Oh, did someone want to say anything? Yeah, no worries. Excellent, Dan. Yeah, please do. Yes, I'm taking notes. I should probably stop sharing my screen when I do that, huh?
Dan says, don't tell anybody, but...
No, I was just making a note that he wants a demo.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I swore once in the writing. All right, gonna shut it down. Cheers, guys. Thanks again. Bye.